Okay, it looks like I am live on the Google Hangouts, but I've yet to figure out how to activate my webcam, so I'm not sure how that's going to work. And I'm hoping that this link is available. I'll go ahead and paste this link into the comments section of the video. Hopefully, well, let's see here. One way to find out is I'll just go there and I suppose I can paste it into the description. Not sure how that works. Okay. Cameraman app. How does that work? Okay, I'm just learning how to do this as I go. All right, there's the chat window. This is interesting. All right, so if I paste that in there, that's interesting. Okay. Screen share. Oh, okay. Let's see, if I go to Video Manager, And then I go to live streaming. And I go to the Truth Seeker Live panel. It shows that oh, here we go, info and settings. I'm going to put in the link right there. And save changes. Hopefully that'll help. Oh, okay. So if I click here, I can see. Yeah, okay. So that's got the link there now in the description. All I have to do now is figure out how to make my webcam work. Let's see here. Let's try this. There we go. Now I'm on. Okay. All right. So I finally figured out how to do Hangouts on air. So I guess I am in full control of the YouTube's technologies. So anybody interested in discussing anything, I'll hang out for a bit and probably just sit here and stare at the wall most of the time. Oh, no, could do that. California election guide. Can we go through that? All right. We can do some reading of the Bible. This is a passage I wanted to go over last time. Actually, I think I want to look at the Mishnah. Let me go get that real quick. I'll be right back. Okay, back. We have the Mishnah, English translation, Jacob Messer. And so last time I did a reading of Leviticus chapter 1. Excuse me. And what I wanted to do was go over the holy things part of this. And let me just go through the table of contents real quickly. So the Mishnah is divided up into these sections here. The first whole division is about agriculture. The second division is on the appointed times. Okay. The third division is on women. The fourth division is on the order of damages. The fifth division is on the holy things. And that's kind of like what I wanted to read about tonight. And the sixth division is on purities. So the fifth division, page 699. Oh, I have a bookmark in here. I wonder what that's for. Well, I guess that's where I was reading. Okay, the fifth division. Holy things. Zebahim. And the first section, it states, all animal offerings which were slaughtered not for their own name are valid. So that the blood is tossed, the entrails burned, etc. But they do not go to the owner's credit in fulfillment of an obligation, except for the Passover and the sin offering. The Passover at its appointed time, the afternoon of the 14th of Nisan, and the sin offering of any time. Rabbi Elazar says, also the guilt offering. Passover at its appointed time, and the sin offering and the guilt offering at any time. Said Rabbi Elazar, the sin offering comes on account of sin, and the guilt offering comes on account of sin. Just as the sin offering is unfit, if it is offered not for its own name, rather under some other name, so the guilt offering is unfit if offered not for its own name. Yosei ben Honi says, those other offerings which are slaughtered for the sake of the Passover and for the sake of the sin offering are invalid. Simon, brother of Azariah, says, if one slaughtered them for the sake of that which is higher than they are valid. If one slaughtered them for the sake of that which is lower than they, but if under the name of a lower grade, they are invalid. How so? Most holy things which one slaughtered for the sake of lesser holy things are invalid. Lesser holy things which one slaughtered for the sake of most holy things are valid. The firstling and the tithe which one slaughtered on the morning of the 14th of Nisan not for its own name, under some other name. Rabbi Joshua declares valid, as if it were slaughtered on the 13th of Nisan. Ben Betera declares it invalid, as if it were slaughtered at twilight of the 14th. Said Simon ben Azai, I have received a tradition from the 72 elders. On the day on which they seated Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah in session, that all animal offerings which are eaten, which were slaughtered not for their own name, are fit, but they do not go to the owner's credit in fulfillment of an obligation, except for the Passover and the sin offering, And Ben Azai thereby added, only the burnt offering. But sages did not agree with him. The Passover and the sin offering, which one slaughtered, not for their own name, the blood of which one received, conveyed, or tossed not for their own name, or for their own name and not, or for their own name and not for their own name, or not for their own name and for their own name, are unfit. How does one do it for their own name and not for their own name? For the sake of the Passover at its time, and for the sake of peace offerings, not for their own name and for their own name. For the sake of peace offerings and for the sake of the Passover. For an animal offering is made unfit by improper intention or deed in 4 respects: in slaughtering, and in receiving the blood, and in conveying the blood, and in tossing the blood. Rabbi Simon declares fit in the case of improperly conveying the blood. For Rabbi Simon did say, it is not possible to make an animal offering without slaughtering and without receiving the blood and without tossing the blood. But it is possible to make an animal offering without conveying the blood. One slaughters the animal at the side of the altar, and forthwith, without conveying the blood at all, tosses the blood onto the altar. Rabbi Lazar says, he who conveys the blood, if he does so in a situation in which he has to convey the blood, the wrong intention renders invalid the act of sacrifice. If he does so in a situation in which he does not have to convey the blood, the wrong intention does not render the act of sacrifice invalid. All animal offerings, the blood of which, 1, a non-priest, 2, a priest mourning his next of kin, 3, a priest who was tebu yom, 4, a priest lacking proper garments, 5, a priest whose atonement is not yet complete, 6, a priest whose hands and feet are not washed, 7, an uncircumcised priest. A priest who was sitting down, a priest standing on utensils, on a beast on the feet of his fellow received has he rendered invalid. If he received it in his left hand, he has rendered the sacrifice invalid. Rabbi Simon declares valid. If it, the blood, was poured onto the floor and one then collected it, it is invalid. If one who was fit, by contrast, sprinkled it on the ramp, not by the altar base. If one sprinkled those drops of blood, which are to be sprinkled below, above, and those which are to be sprinkled above, below, those which are to be sprinkled inside, outside, those which are to be sprinkled outside, inside, it is invalid. And punishment by extirpation does not apply to it. He who slaughters the animal offering, intending to toss its blood outside of the temple court, or part of its blood outside, to burn its sacrificial portions outside, to eat its flesh outside, or an olive's bulk of its flesh outside, or to eat an olive's bulk of the skin of the fat tail outside, it is invalid. And punishment by extirpation does not apply to it in the case of the priest who eats thereof. He who slaughters the animal offering, intending to toss its blood on the next day, or part of its blood on the next day, to burn its sacrificial portions on the next day, or part of its sacrificial portions on the next day, to eat its flesh on the next day, or part of its flesh on the next day, or an olive's bulk of the skin of the fat tail on the next day, it is refuse. And they who eat it, even at the proper time, are liable on its account to punishment by extirpation. This is the general rule. Whoever slaughters or receives the blood or conveys the blood or sprinkles the blood, intending to eat something which is usually eaten, to burn something which is usually burned, outside of its proper place, the court of the most holy things, Jerusalem for lesser holy things, it is invalid, and the flesh may not be eaten, and extirpation does not apply to it. Whoever slaughters or receives the blood or conveys the blood or sprinkles the blood, intending to eat something which is usually eaten and to burn something which is usually burned, outside of its proper time, it is refuse. and they are liable on its account to extirpation, even if they eat the flesh within the time limit. And the foregoing rule applies on condition that what renders the offering permissible, the blood, which permits the sacrificial portions to be burned on the altar, and the flesh to be eaten by the priest or owner, that is, the proper sprinkling or tossing of the blood, is offered in accord with its requirement. How is what renders the offering permissible offered in accord with its requirement? If one slaughtered in silence, lacking improper intent, but received the blood and conveyed the blood, and sprinkled the blood, intending to eat or burn the flesh outside of its proper time, or if one slaughtered, intending to eat or burn flesh outside of the proper time, received the blood and conveyed the blood and sprinkled the blood in silence, lacking improper intent. Or if he slaughtered, received the blood and conveyed the blood and sprinkled the blood, intending to eat or burn the flesh outside of its proper time, this is the case in which what renders the offering permissible is offered in accord with its requirement. How is what renders the offering permissible not offered in accord with its requirement? If one slaughtered, intending to eat or burn the flesh outside of its proper place, received the blood and conveyed the blood and tossed the blood, intending to eat or burn the flesh outside of its time, or if one slaughtered, intending to eat or burn the flesh outside its proper time, received the blood and conveyed the blood and tossed the blood, intending to eat or burn the flesh outside of its place. Or if one slaughtered, received the blood and conveyed the blood and tossed the blood, intending to eat or burn the flesh outside of its place. The Passover and the sin offering, which one slaughtered not for their own name, the blood of which one also received and conveyed and tossed, intending to eat and burn the flesh outside of its proper time, or which one slaughtered, intending to eat or burn the flesh outside of their proper time, and the blood of which one received and conveyed had tossed not for their own name. This is a case in which what renders the offering permissible is not offered in accord with its requirement. If a man slaughtered an animal offering and received, conveyed, and tossed the blood, intending to eat an olive's bulk outside the proper place, and an olive's bulk on the next day at an improper time, an olive's bulk on the next day and an olive's bulk outside, half an olive's bulk outside and half an olive's bulk on the next day, half an olive's bulk on the next day, and half an olive's bulk outside. It is unfit, but extirpation does not apply to it. Said Rabbi Judah, this is the general rule. If the improper intention concerning time came before the improper intention concerning the place, it is refuse, and they are liable on its account for extirpation. And if the improper intention concerning the place came before the improper intention concerning the time, it is invalid. And extirpation does not apply to him. And sages say, this and that are invalid, and extirpation does not apply to him. If one intends to eat half an olive's bulk and to burn half an olive's bulk, it is valid, for eating and burning are not joined together. All unfit people who slaughtered their act of slaughter is valid, for an act of slaughter is valid when done by non-priests, women, slaves, and unclean men, even in the case of their slaughtering most holy things. And this is so on condition that the unclean people do not touch the flesh. Therefore, they also invalidate by proper intention in the act of slaughtering. But all of them who are unfit, who receive the blood, intending to eat the flesh outside its proper time or outside its proper place. If the lifeblood suitable for tossing still remained in the beast, that is, the blood which issues at the moment of death, a fit person should go and, with proper intention, receive it, since the improper intention of unfit people is null in respect to receiving, conveying, and tossing the blood. The offering remains valid in the previous cases, F through G. By contrast to A and E. If a fit person received the blood and handed it over to an unfit person without conveying it, he, the unfit one, should return it to the fit person. If he received the blood in his right hand and put it into his left, he should return it to his right hand. If he received it in a sacred utensil and put it into an unconsecrated utensil, he should put it back into the sacred utensil. If after the blood was received in a utensil, it poured from the utensil onto the pavement and one gathered it up, it is valid. If he who was unfit tossed it on the ramp, not against the foundation of the altar, if he tossed those which are to be tossed below above, or those which are to be tossed above below, those which are to be tossed inside outside, or those which are to be tossed outside inside, If the lifeblood still remained in the beast, a suitable person should go and receive it and repeat the sprinkling. If he who slaughters the animal sacrifice intending to eat something which is usually not eaten, to burn something which is not usually burned, it is valid. Rabbi Elazar declares invalid. If he does so intending to eat something which is usually eaten, or to burn something which is usually burned in volume less than an olive's bulk, it is valid. If he does so intending to eat a half of olive's bulk and to burn a half of olive's bulk in an improper manner, it is valid. For eating and burning do not join together. He who slaughters the animal intending to eat an olive's bulk of the hide, the grease, the sediment, jelly, the flayed off flesh, the bones, the tendons, the hooves, the horns, outside of the proper time or outside of the proper place, it is valid. And they are not liable on their account for violation of the laws of refuse, remnant, or uncleanliness. He who slaughters female consecrated animals intending to eat the fetus or the afterbirth outside of the proper place or time has not rendered the sacrifice refuse, for these are not usually eaten. He who wrings the necks of turtle doves inside intending to eat their eggs outside the proper place or time has not rendered the sacrifice refuse. As to the milk of female consecrated beasts and the eggs of turtle doves, which are not integral to the body of the sacrifice, they are not liable on their account in respect to the laws of refuse, remnant, or uncleanliness. That's very interesting. So this is all quite interesting to go over. Everything has to do with proper time, proper place. This section here, which kind of I had to stop at here, I might disagree with, but the whole thing about the Mishnah is about the rabbis disagreeing with different aspects of the way in which offerings and sacrifices should be carried out. You get a general idea about intention, about how things, about how important intention is. Okay, in the Jewish worldview, intention is everything, and that is why in our law we have basically inherited that aspect, which is that intent is taken into consideration in judging, acts that take place, criminal acts that take place. Intent of act is certainly a very important thing. Now, in reading all that, let's look over Leviticus chapter 1 again and see what we can get out of it now that we've read a bit of the Mishnah. So Leviticus chapter 1, verse 1. Then the Lord called to Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, when any man of you brings an offering to the Lord, you shall bring your offering of animals from the herd or the flock. If his offering is a burnt offering from the herd, he shall offer it, a male without defect. He shall offer it at the doorway of the tent of meeting, that he may be accepted before the Lord. He shall lay his hand on the head of the burnt offering, that it may be accepted for him to make atonement on his behalf. He shall slay the young bull before the Lord, and Aaron's sons, the priest, shall offer up the blood and sprinkle the blood around the altar that is at the doorway of the tent of meeting. He shall then skin the burnt offering and cut it into its pieces. The sons of Aaron, the priest, shall put fire on the altar and arrange wood on the fire. Then Aaron's sons and priests shall arrange the pieces, the head and the suet over the wood which is on the fire that is on the altar. Its entrails, however, and its legs he shall wash with water, and the priest shall offer up in smoke all of it on the altar for a burnt offering, an offering by fire of a soothing aroma to the Lord. But if his offering is from the flock of the sheep or of the goats, for a burnt offering he shall offer it a male without defect. He shall slay it on the side of the altar northward before the Lord, and Aaron's sons, the priests, shall sprinkle its blood around on the altar. He shall then cut it into its pieces with its head and its suet, and the priest shall arrange them on the wood which is on the fire that is on the altar. The entrails, however, and the legs he shall wash with water, and the priest shall offer all of it and offer it up in smoke on the altar. It is a burnt offering, an offering by fire of a soothing aroma to the Lord. But if his offering to the Lord is a burnt offering of birds, then he shall bring his offering from the turtle doves or from the young pigeons. The priest shall bring it to the altar and wring off its head and offer it up in smoke on the altar, and its blood is to be drained out on the side of the altar. He shall also take away its crop with its feathers and cast it beside the altar eastward to the place of the ashes. Then he shall tear it by its wings, but shall not sever it. And the priest shall offer it up in smoke on the altar on the wood which is on the fire. It is a burnt offering, an offering by fire of a soothing aroma to the Lord. Leviticus chapter 1, verse 1 through 17. So we have the very beginning of the descriptions of the sacrificial system of the Israelites. Let me see if I can continue reading some more of the Mishnah here on the holy things. Okay, Mishnah. By the way, this is the Mishnah Zebahim. Zebahim 3.6. If one slaughtered it, an animal sacrifice, on condition to leave over its blood and not to toss it, or its sacrificial parts and not to offer them up for the next day, or take them outside, Rabbi Judah declares invalid, as would be the case if the officiant actually did so, and sages declare valid. If he slaughtered it on condition to sprinkle it on the ramp, not at the foundation of the altar, to sprinkle those which are to be sprinkled above, or those which are sprinkled above, below, or those which are to be sprinkled inside, outside, or those which are to be sprinkled outside, inside, that unclean people eat it, that unclean people offer it up, that uncircumcised priests eat it, that uncircumcised priests offer it up, to break the bones of the Passover, or to eat of it while it is raw, to mix its blood with the blood of unfit beasts. It is valid for improper intention, invalidates only in respect to eating the flesh or burning the sacrificial parts outside its proper place or outside its proper time. So that's a key that's a key sentence there. For improper intention invalidates only in respect to eating the flesh or burning the sacrificial parts outside of its proper place or outside of its proper time. And in respect to the Passover and the sin offering, improper intention invalidates when this involves slaughtering them not for their own name. The house of Rabbi Shammai say, any offering, the tossings of the blood of which are to be placed on the outer altar, if one properly tossed, one tossing of blood has affected atonement. But in the case of the sin offering, two tossings properly tossed on the outer altar are required to effect atonement. And the house of Rabbi Hillel say, even a sin offering, the tossing of the blood of which was properly placed in the case of one placing has affected atonement. Therefore, if one placed the first in the proper manner in silence, but the second intending to eat the flesh or burn the sacrificial portion outside of its proper time, the offering is valid and it has affected atonement. If one placed the first intending to eat the flesh or burn the sacrificial portion outside its proper time, and the second its proper place, it is refuse, that which permits the offering to be eaten, having been offered in accord with its requirement. And they are liable on account for extirpation. Any animal offering, the tossings of the blood of which are to be placed on the inner altar, if one omitted one of the acts of the tossing of blood, has not affected atonement. Therefore, if one tossed all of them in the proper manner, but one of them not in its proper manner, it is invalid, and extirpation does not apply to it. These are things on account of which they are not liable because of transgression of the law of refuse. The handful and the frankincense and the incense offering and the meal offering of the priests and the meal offering of the anointed priests and the meal offering which accompanies the drink offerings and the blood. And the drink offerings which come by themselves, but not those which come with a sacrifice. Verses number 6, the words of Rabbi Meir. And sages say also those which come along with a beast. Rabbi Meir's view is that the blood of the sacrifices permits the drink offering to the altar. Sages point out that the drink offering may come later. The log of oil of the Masorah. Rabbi Simeon says they are not liable on its account because of transgressions of the law of refuse. If the guilt offering is made refuse, and Rabbi Meir says they are liable on its account because of violation of the laws of refuse if the guilt offering is made refuse. For the blood of the guilt offering renders it permitted for offering or eating. So I could go on and on here, but this is the Mishnah. And it's all about the details of the Levitical law in this section here, which it's all about the proper time, the proper place, the intentions. Moving on to Leviticus chapter 2. Let's just take a look at that real quick. Now, when anyone presents a grain offering as an offering to the Lord, his offering shall be of fine flour, and he shall pour oil on it and put frankincense on it. He shall then bring it to Aaron's sons, the priests, and shall take from it his handful of its fine flour and its oil with all of its frankincense. And the priest shall offer it up in smoke as its memorial portion on the altar, an offering by fire of soothing aroma to the Lord. The remainder of the grain offering belongs to Aaron and his sons, a thing most holy of the offerings to the Lord by fire. Now, when you bring an offering of the grain offering baked in an oven, it shall be unleavened cakes of fine flour mixed with oil, or unleavened wafers spread with oil. If your offering is a grain offering made on the griddle, it shall be of fine flour, unleavened, mixed with oil. You shall break it into bits and pour oil on it. It is a grain offering. Now, if your offering is a grain offering made in a pan, it shall be made of fine flour with oil. When you bring in the grain offering, which is made of these things to the Lord, it shall be presented to the priest, and he shall bring it to the altar. The priest then shall take up from the grain offering its memorial portion, and shall offer it up in smoke on the altar as an offering by fire of a soothing aroma to the Lord. The remainder of the grain offering belongs to Aaron and his sons, a thing most holy of the offerings to the Lord by fire. No grain offering which you bring to the Lord shall be made with leaven, for you shall not offer it up in smoke, any leaven or any honey, as an offering by fire to the Lord. As an offering of first fruits, you shall bring them to the Lord, but they shall not ascend for a soothing aroma on the altar. Every grain offering of yours, moreover, you shall season with salt, so that the salt of the covenant of your God shall not be lacking from your grain offering. With all your offerings you shall offer salt. Also, if you bring a grain offering of early ripened things to the Lord, you shall bring fresh heads of grain roasted in the fire, grits of new growth for the grain offering of your early ripened things. You shall then put oil on it and lay incense on it. It is a grain offering. The priest shall offer up in smoke its memorial portion, part of its grits and its oil with all its incense, as an offering by fire to the Lord. So, as you can see, the ritual is very involved, and we have a whole section in the Jewish Mishnah, as well as the Talmud. This is just the Mishnah, on how to properly take part in and perform the daily work of the tabernacle, the daily work in the house of the Lord. And so a bunch of rabbis disagreeing with each other on how things should be done, but you get an overall general idea, more so, of the general aim, the general message through the ages of what was important in regard to that. And so it's a lot of study. All right. We'll leave it at that. God bless.